You said when you confronted Jacob Rees-Mogg that people are dying because of his views. Can you give us an example?
So there are disabled people who've been declared fit to work who have died subsequently. There were people we saw in January who were dying in hospital corridors on trolleys because of the crisis in the NHS. We've seen what happened with Grenfell. And there's a huge number of examples of how austerity and the Tories' policies have caused deaths.
Right, Tim Stanley, how do you respond?
I don't think Grenfell can be linked directly to government policy. As regards to the others, I'm not going to comment upon individual cases because that's up to those who want to make that case to make that case. But I don't think it's disputable that when you try and reform a welfare system in a way that ultimately is about taking people off the welfare and either denying them benefits because they don't deserve them or moving them into work, the result is that some people do get hurt. Now, in the case of, for example, universal credit, it might be that people judge that ultimately so many people do get hurt by the transition that involves that it's better to drop the program than to go ahead with it. But the question that hangs over all welfare reform, accepting, as I said, that there will be people hurt by welfare reform, is does a government do nothing? If a welfare system is big, bloated, too expensive, does a government not touch it for fear that someone will be hurt? That's the dilemma the government faced, and it chose to take the bold radical reform.
In a very wrong and disgusting
Shabbir,
way.
you respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about some people may get hurt as if it's not millions of people. I mean, we see 1 million people dependent on food banks. We see homelessness has doubled in the last 5 years. We see the number of children living in poverty is now in the millions. So it's not a few people getting hurt. It is the vast majority of this country are getting hurt. Welfare reforms is such a
Shabbir, that the Tories... Well, do you think, though, Shabbir, that Tories are evil?
I think their policies are evil, and this is what I told Jacob Rees-Mogg yesterday, that he's a despicable person for defending austerity, and as we saw, without any substance whatsoever.
Right. I mean, Tim Stanley, the point there is the policies are evil, and if you support those policies, then you too are despicable.
Right. The goal of welfare reform under the last government, and I don't know why the Tories don't explain this, Jacob Rees-Mogg tries to, which is what puts him in the firing line. The goal was not simply to penalise people or to take away their benefits. The goal was to take a group of people who appeared to be stuck on benefits and find a way either of helping them into work or actually giving them more benefits if they were entitled to them. So there is a moral principle motivating this. In essence, Tories and socialists want the same thing. They want people working and they want people making the maximum amount of money and the most of their talents. They just have a different way of going about it. This is not good versus evil. This is two different practical responses to the same problem.
That's an absolute lie. That is simply a lie. I mean, you're talking about welfare reforms, but what we've seen is millions of disabled people being declared fit to work, having their benefits taken off them, and up to 80% of the people who do manage to appeal it have been declared unfit for work and had the right to have those benefits in the first place. So all the Tories have done is caused immense suffering for millions of people for absolutely no reason, and it's unjustifiable. And this myth that you keep propagating about people in work is a lie, because Britain is the only advanced economy that has stagnating wages. The vast majority of people who are living in poverty are in work. The people who are claiming benefits are in work. The people who are homeless, the vast majority of them are in work. This myth of employment and we're at the highest employment levels is a lie, because people are still suffering.
Right, okay, I'm not going to disagree with some of the details that you've presented here, but here's the thing. We went through a credit crunch, we went through a recession, the government found itself deeply, the government found itself, the banks and the Labour government made it worse for having spent too much money. So having gone through that, we faced a choice. Does the government spend its way through the recession, or does it try to cut reform and get people off welfare and grow the private economy. Here in Britain, we chose to put employment first, and the consequences, we have the highest employment rates for decades. On the continent, for instance, in France, they chose to take your method. I'm not questioning its morality, but you can see the consequences. A quarter of young French people are unemployed.
No, I'll tell you what the consequences are. The consequences are is that we've had a shrinkage in our economy. The Tories have added £750 billion to our national debt. You talk about not spending, and it's been debunked, this myth that austerity works. It hasn't worked here, hasn't worked in Greece, hasn't worked anywhere. So I don't know how in 2017, after a general election where the population made it very clear that they have no trust in the Tories or their agenda of austerity, that you can try and defend it. It's simply nonsense, I'm sorry.
The Conservative Party won the general election.
Shabbir and Tim, I'm going to break in here, but thank you very much for debating this issue.